In today's video, we're discussing the latest trade talk around the NHL. Some new names have emerged in the rumor mill for players who could be dealt before the deadline. Today, we're focusing on teams like Montreal, Pittsburgh, Edmonton, and Columbus, as well as Philadelphia. Has former number 2 overall pick Nolan Patrick retired? There's some conflicting reports out there in the media. Plus, we have some updates as well on Ethan Bear and some pretty interesting comments from Avs defenseman Toews. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot of news and rumors to take a look at today. I want to kick things off with the news that NHL legend Jaromir Jagr has once again begun his season over in Kladno in the Czech Republic. So once again, he's still technically actively playing in a professional hockey league. So the Hockey Hall of Fame will not make him eligible to be inducted until he's officially retired. So, of course, Jagr now, well, past the age of 50, still going strong, has obviously made it clear that the team that he's owner of in Kladno, he feels that once, if he doesn't play, that it's going to really impact a lot of sponsors and, ticket revenue. And really, like, he feels the team could possibly, do really poorly and even fold if he's not involved on the ice. Obviously, he can't play forever, but at this stage of his career, he's still able to play, even though I don't suspect he's going to play every game. Like, I believe he's more of a part-time player, but still, Jagr is officially kicked off the season and made an appearance. So, again, it has to be retired 3 years before you can be eligible for the Hockey Hall of Fame. I would hope at some point they would just make an exception and get him inducted. I know the Penguins have finally made an exception to getting his jersey retired and are having him come to Pittsburgh for that in the new year. So obviously, nice to see him still playing, but I don't really care for the rules. I'd like to see him be inducted where he deserves to be. My concern is he plays so long that it could be a really long time before he ever gets entered into the Hall of Fame. It'd be nice to see him, get a little bit more chance to enjoy it. Now, there was also some conflicting reports today, and a lot of people seem to believe the reports, but they've turned out to be false. But there was reports that Nolan Patrick, the former Philadelphia Flyer, number 2 overall pick in the 2017 NHL draft, was officially retiring from the game of hockey at the age of 25. That apparently is not the case. Elliotte Friedman had reached out to Patrick himself. He would not conduct an interview or speak about it, but he did confirm that he has not officially announced his retirement. I don't suspect we're going to see Nolan Patrick in the NHL again. Clearly, he's had a lot of issues with injuries, especially around concussions and migraines and things of that nature. So it's really not going to happen. I mean, he has no contract. He's not affiliated with any NHL team right now. It's really unfortunate. He had a real promising career, and injuries derailed him super young. And even the last couple of years, he was technically on a roster. He didn't play much. Didn't play the last couple of years. He was on a roster at all or on a contract. So it's real unfortunate. But those reports today regarding Nolan Patrick have turned out to be false. So we'll see. But for all intents and purposes, in my opinion, he basically kind of is retired because we're not going to see him in the NHL again in the future. The Washington Capitals today did confirm that they will be signing defenseman Ethan Bear, but at a later date. They also confirmed that he was going to be joining the team and was going to start practicing with them for now. He obviously will be getting a contract, but it's expected that he's probably not going to play until after the holiday break sometime in early January. That's at least where things are going. I know he conducted an interview as well with the media in Washington today. Said he's feeling good, feeling healthy. Why he chose Washington essentially was that he was wanted and not needed. So I found that part interesting. I don't know if that was a stab at Vancouver or what have you, because that's where a lot of people expected him to go. But essentially, they offered him more term and money than anybody else could right now. He mentioned as well how they, were, certainly from a medical standpoint, very caring and looking out for him and helping him in that respect. So he was quite content to join the Capitals organization. Edmonton Oilers forward Connor Brown is going to be a healthy scratch in their next game tomorrow against the New Jersey Devils. It's about time. As much as I like Connor Brown as a player, he's had a great career. He's a terrific player, but he's had his struggles this year. He has not worked out for the Oilers at all. In 23 games this season, he's got 1 point. He did miss some time due to injury. Otherwise, he has not been healthy scratched yet this year. 1 measly point. And the contract he has a small salary but a big bonus structure, and it was all around games played, and he only had to play 10. And so he hit that a while ago. That over $3 million bonus will, in fact, impact their salary cap quite hard, most likely next year. And he may not even be there. And it may not really get better. It's hard to say. I mean, clearly, I think he was, 3 or 4 games into his season last year with the Washington Capitals. He suffered a major injury and, was out the rest of the year. Appeared to be healthy, ready to go. Oilers took a chance. And, the former junior line mate and teammate of Connor McDavid, it just hasn't worked out. So I don't know. I mean, it's not like he hasn't had his opportunities to play in the top 6. It's not like he hasn't had that chance on the right line combination or what have you. I don't know. I mean, maybe the injury has just done more, taken more of a toll on his body than anybody ever thought. Clearly, he only played a few games in Washington last year. Before that, he was in Ottawa, started his career with the Leafs. He was a very good player for the Leafs and for the Senators. During his stretch of time there, he became expendable in Ottawa after a lot of other younger players signed long-term deals, and they brought in a few other veterans like Claude Giroux, and went to Washington, got hurt right off the bat, and really hasn't been the same since. So we'll see if he can get his game together, bounce back, or what have you. But nice to see the head coach taking a little bit more of an approach here to hold him accountable, and can't get him in the lineup if he's not playing well. But a lot of times I find, because of teams' salary cap structure, it's a little more challenging to hold players accountable and sit them out sometimes, because you may not be able to get another player in their spot depending on how tight your cap is. So I know in some cases that there are some players that get a longer rope than others because of that. But we'll see how this helps them, or hopefully he can get things turned around in the not too distant future. The Colorado Avalanche last night lost to the Chicago Blackhawks. Post-game, defenseman Devon Toews, who played a ton in last night's game, had some very interesting comments, and I would like to think that it's going to cause a stir in the Avalanche dressing room. I would think that these comments are, certainly to the point where I feel like they will need to be addressed. Sometimes a player might say something to the media and people might think, oh, that's a little harsh, or it might be off a little bit. And a lot of times nobody really takes notice. I bet you it gets swept under the rug. Nobody really cares too much. But these comments are going to be heard, and I think this was have to have been addressed probably as early as today, I would think. But he said that this is to Toews' comments from last night. He says, "I think we got some guys who think they're playing well, and I think they're kidding themselves. At this point, we need guys who can play in our system and know what it takes to win. It's tough to play in this league when you don't know where your teammates are going to be." So essentially calling out teammates, which we don't know exactly who he's targeting, but I mean, I guess if you look at players that are actively struggling, it's probably pretty clear among some who he might be referring to. And, that's a pretty bold statement. Obviously, Toews has been there for a while now, makes up one half of the top pair of the blue line with Cale Makar. Well-respected guy, not somebody who was normally so outspoken. So for him to speak that way tells me that there must be quite a high level of frustration. So be curious to see how this impacts the Avalanche. If it has a positive spin, that maybe it'll galvanize the group, or could it have the opposite effect? Time will tell, but I'll be curious to see the follow-up and how things kind of go with the Avs since these comments were made. Now, in the trade rumor front, we got a variety of different things we want to take a look at today. Some of these players are not guys we've really talked about any time recently. Obviously, NHL insiders have made it clear that the Columbus Blue Jackets are pretty much willing to listen on anybody, barring a couple of their top young players like an Adam Fantilli. They obviously don't want to move him, but there isn't too many players on that roster, especially ones who have any amount of experience, that they're not willing to talk about and listen to on a trade front. For example, one thing that's come up here based on NHL insiders reporting this is, what about Johnny Gaudreau? There's a writer for Philadelphia Hockey Now who wrote an article speculating on, should the Flyers try to bring Johnny Gaudreau home? Obviously, when he was a free agent, not all that long ago, only 2 seasons back, this is only his second year in Columbus. As much as he didn't really talk about it a lot publicly, there was speculated that he was very interested in going to Philadelphia. Philadelphia would be his hometown team. And they did not have the cap space. They were not in a good spot. This was before Tortorella and Briere all got there. This was still under the Chuck Fletcher era in Philadelphia. And they absolutely couldn't, the conversations went almost nowhere because the Flyers had really no capacity to offer anywhere near what he would want on a contract. So he was interested in going there. They knew this well ahead and did not really position themselves, even though you can make an argument now that, he's having a down season, but sure, he's on a bad team too. Things are not gone well. It's been a really odd year in Columbus this year, and you get him in a different team with some different line mates, and things may change quite differently. So at the end of the day, Johnny Gaudreau does have a full no-move clause. I know when he was making his decision and signing in free agency, he made it all about family. Of course, his family is much closer to Philly. So, he made it out that essentially he and his wife were quite content with Columbus. He seemed like to me that he was quite happy to be in a quieter market, a market that's going to kind of keep him out of the radar a little bit. Obviously, after playing in the Canadian market for a bunch of time, he's used to being highly scrutinized under the microscope daily. I don't think he wanted that anymore. I think he was quite content to collect his big paycheck and kind of live in, a little bit of anonymity and, be just to blend in, so to speak, on a quieter market. So Columbus, when they came calling, he was quite interested, and it's close enough to home that he can be home and back and forth quite quickly over just a very short flight instead of flying halfway across the continent from the province of Alberta. So, the Flyers are in a completely different spot now. Their cap situation is completely different. They're obviously, technically rebuilding, but they're obviously doing quite well and winning under John Tortorella right now. They're on pace to be a playoff team this year. Danny Briere still has made it clear he's going to do the right things for the organization to help them move forward and not so much focus on the now as they are about the future and making sure this team can become to a point where they're, competitive year in and year out, not make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, in and out, and be that mediocrity inconsistency that they were for quite a stretch of time. They want to be, competing year after year after year. And they do have some young, interesting talent coming up to the roster as well here in the near future with Cutter Gauthier and of course Michkov from Russia when he comes over. And they've got some players that are younger right now as well that are interesting as well. So, would there be a fit there? It's an interesting thought. I don't know for sure that, Johnny's going to want to waive his no-move clause to go there. But like I said, before he signed with Columbus, that's what everybody said what he wanted, and it never happened. But now there's an opportunity. Now, what the acquisition cost could be is difficult to say. That might prove to be enough to keep the Flyers from making the move and pulling the trigger here. But if you're willing to talk and listen on just about anybody, why, if you're Columbus, wouldn't you approach Gaudreau and say, listen, we brought you here on this big free agent contract, but we're going in a new direction. Things have not worked out. If you're interested in going home to Philly, let's try to work something out here so we get a good return and you get to go where you want. Obviously he's way older, like a 10-year age gap compared to guys like Fantilli and Johnson and some of their younger players that are hopefully lead this team down the road. It's a situation where you can make an argument it just doesn't make sense, and that maybe they should, like Gaudreau, Laine, to a degree, Werenski, Merzlikins, and maybe they should all consider moving and really kind of get this thing to the point where they can kind of strip it down a little further and continue building it up through the draft. So we'll see where it goes, but you got to think over time as things get, in Columbus where they're not great, if they would actually consider moving their prize free agent signing from just a couple off seasons back. And in Edmonton, it's been quite discussed on Insider Trading on TSN that Philip Broberg is expected to be moved. Of course, former first round pick from 2019 is expected to be traded for a couple of different reasons. One, he hasn't really found his consistent spot to grab with the Oilers. He's played well at the American Hockey League, but inconsistent at the NHL level, which is to be expected considering the lack and limited amount of experience he has. But at the same time, they appear now willing to move him to make some changes to try to go for a Stanley Cup. And whether or not they're able to move Jack Campbell's contract and he's used as a sweetener, that's a possibility. Or another option might be that he is used as trade bait to make a big acquisition to put them over the top. Whether it be, dumping Campbell or bringing somebody else in, either way, he's an important trade chip that a lot of teams would be interested in should they be wanting to do business here with the Edmonton Oilers. So it's well documented now by enough insiders that Broberg's available, and he's likely going to be the guy they use to make a big acquisition, possibly to unload that Jack Campbell contract. Now, Chris Johnson, NHL insider for TSN and The Athletic, also has his new updated trade bait board, and one name that kind of caught a lot of attention that's somewhat surprising to a degree, but not really, is Penguins forward Jake Guentzel. Jake Guentzel's a pending unrestricted free agent, making $6 million into his late 20s, almost 30 now, and he's a consistent 35 to 40 goal scorer and a proven playoff performer with multiple Stanley Cups on his resume. At this point, there's really been no word of any contract extension talks between Kyle Dubas and Guentzel's camp at all to extend the contract. I have to think, though, that trading Jake Guentzel is tricky. I understand why the team might consider moving a few veteran players out. They brought in Erik Karlsson, they brought in Riley Smith, and this team has gotten worse instead of better. They're not performing up to par. Mike Sullivan's on a long-term contract as coach, and it looks like the roster is probably going to see change before they see change behind the bench. So with Jake Guentzel, the surprising part is that there's really been no dialogue on an extension, considering how important he's been to the team. So that's why that there's some belief that he could very well be dealt. When you think of some teams, whether it be a team like in their own division in the East, like the Islanders, who could use scoring, a team like the Boston Bruins comes to mind, who could use some more scoring, especially as of late, the way they've played. The Carolina Hurricanes, again, another interdivisional team. You look to the Western Conference as well, and whether or not there's teams like the Oilers or, even a team like Seattle, if they want to make a push, but Seattle's probably going to be a seller. That's probably something they look at in the offseason. There's lots of teams out there that want to add that top scoring winger for a playoff push. There's no doubt. There'd be no shortage of interest should he actually be made available by the Penguins. But the big thing for me is, how is Sidney Crosby going to feel about this? We know that, you say what you want, Crosby has a ton of influence over some of these decisions. I don't think Kyle Dubas is going to want to make a move that's really going to upset their captain. Clearly, they recommitted to Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, and they added more veterans who they thought could help those guys make another run and possibly win one more Stanley Cup before their time and contracts are up. They extended Letang, they extended Malkin. Crosby still has another year after this year. Are they going to want to make a move that upsets Crosby? I really don't think so. I think it's important to the team and the franchise for Sid to be a lifelong Penguin throughout his entire career. He's got one more year. He's still playing at an incredibly high level. I suspect he's going to sign another contract, whether it be with Pittsburgh or elsewhere. And I would assume he would prefer that to be with Pittsburgh as well. Do one more contract for another couple of years, and he's probably going to call her a day after that. At least that's my prediction. Crosby's still playing at a really high level, so I'd be surprised if he didn't want to play a little bit longer than his current contract has him right now. But is he going to want to trade one of his best scoring wingers that he loves to play with? That's a conversation I think Kyle Dubas would have to have with Crosby ahead of time. I don't know. Just a lot of people think it's weird that there's no talks in place to extend him. They've already got these other veteran players, like including Karlsson now, on fairly long-term deals in their later, years. Do they want to add Jake Guentzel, who's about to turn 30, and sign him for another 4 to 6 years and have another contract in the same boat on a team that's struggling? As much as they like the player and as much as he's been consistent for them, is it time for a change? Time will tell. We'll have to see. That's going to be an interesting scenario to watch as it unfolds throughout the year as we approach the deadline. And in Montreal, there's still lots of talk as well that they're going to possibly move top defenseman Mike Matheson. Now, no guarantee they will. I know a lot of Habs fans have been talking online, thinking they're going to make the playoffs. I honestly don't think they're going to be completely honest. I know there are a number of fans out there who feel like they're way better than Buffalo and Ottawa. I don't think that's the case either. Are they doing better right now? Sure, but it's not that much better. And they don't have a lot of regulation wins. I don't think this team is really built for the playoffs right now. They have several pieces that are missing. And I think Ken Hughes and Jeff Gorton know that, and they don't expect playoffs. If they get in, great. But to me, that's not going to stop them from making moves that they feel are best for the team in the future. Now, like I mentioned before, there's other veterans around that are getting interest that could be involved in trades, whether it be David Savard, Sean Monahan, Yoel Armia, or others. But Mike Matheson made Chris Johnson's trade board as well, mainly because of the fact that he's playing top pair minutes. He's playing really well. He's proven that he can be a great contributor, and because of that, there's going to be interest. Now, Matheson comes with a little bit of term, 4.875 million, and it's not that bad a contract. Terrific skater, great on a breakout, great passer, lots to like. Doesn't mean they want to move him. Now, he's a Montreal native, and I know Ken Hughes and Jeff Gorton really like this guy, and they do need to keep some veterans around with this club. I don't know that they move Matheson unless they get a absolutely ridiculous trade offer, and as much as there would be interest in Matheson, I don't know that they will. Now, a guy like Savard or Monahan, I think, much more likely to move. Savard may or may not, given the fact that he's not a pure rental. He has another year of term on his contract, and that could prove problematic. So we'll see. But could the Habs move their top defenseman? It's maybe. I think there's going to be interest, but again, I think he's a player they're probably quite willing to keep and hang on to and be a good help for the other younger players. Unless they get a crazy offer, they just can't refuse. But otherwise, I think Mike Matheson will be a Hab for a bit longer. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.